Well, for the second game in a row, the Nashville Predators play well enough to win and blow it at the very end. This time they lose 3-2 to the Dallas Stars in the last minute of the game. What went wrong for the Preds this time? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free Nashville Predators podcast that's available to you wherever you get your podcast and, of course, on YouTube. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com. Normally I have a partner in crime, but Ann has the day off, so it's me riding solo today. And what a solo adventure I have for you guys. Nashville Predators back on the ice for the first time since Christmas break. And trying to figure out the best way to say this. There was reason for optimism, but at the same time, a reason to go, yep, this is the embodiment of the Nashville Predators right here. It was a game in which the Predators easily could have won against one of the top teams in the Western Conference, the top team in the Central Division. Predators went out, put forth a really good performance, looked like they belonged on the same ice, and then just one or two lackluster moments in the game absolutely doomed everything that the Predators put together in a positive fashion last night. And that is the key of the frustrations, I think, for the Nashville Predators team right now, is that a lot of good play, a lot of good things are in their reach, and it's just one or two things that just completely undo what would have otherwise been a pretty solid game. So let's talk about this game a little bit, because there's some interesting sound bites from Roman Josi after last night's game that I want to talk about, kind of about where this team is. But first, let's break down the game real quick. Didn't get off to a good start. Jamie Benn scored with about a minute 20 seconds in. Kind of a lackluster first period, but the Predators came out strong in the second. Philip Forsberg tied it up. Roope Hintz scored about 2 minutes later, but then Yakov Trenin tied it right back up again. It was 2-2 for the most of the second period, on to the very end when it looked like maybe we were destined for another overtime game. Roope Hintz, a little scrum in front of the net type goal, gets a rebound, gets a loose puck, and puts it past UC Saros with 53 seconds left on the clock to give Dallas the 3-2 lead and the 3-2 win. As we mentioned, Ann's not here, but my one word is a perfect tribute to her: snacks. As in snacks in the sin bin, y'all. The penalties again. That was it. It's hard to talk about this game without talking about the penalties, because number one, I guess the refs last night were just feeling feisty, because it seems like just every 2-3 minutes there was a call. And if you're the Nashville Predators, you give up 6 power play chances against one of the best teams in the NHL, and that's not going to cut it. Now, the penalty kill did well. Dallas scored 1 power play goal in the second, but, killing 5 out of 6 chances against a pretty good power play unit is a good thing. But like we said, it's not necessarily converting on the man advantage. That's the thing. It's sometimes just the momentum that's lost when you have to take your 5-on-5 unit off the ice, when you have to put your penalty killing unit on the ice, when you have to kind of gear up and put all these defensive forwards out there, when you have to, kind of prepare for just onslaught of pressure after pressure in your defensive zone. It gets you out of your rhythm. And we saw that last night. We saw that last night for the Nashville Predators, where it's just they couldn't get any sustained momentum going for big chunks of the game, because it just anytime they put something together, there would be a play and they would wind up going to the box, having a man advantage, and they just couldn't build off anything. I mean, even when they had a power play chance, we saw it in the second period. The Preds started with a power play, and what happened? We had the Tommy Novak penalty where he kind of made a questionable play, kind of a lazy tripping penalty against Miro Heiskanen, and that killed the power play. The first half of the game, it was a Dante Fabro threw the puck over the glass. He comes out of the box. Not 30 seconds later, Colton Sissons throws the puck over the glass. And it's like the same play twice. And that, to me, those are the type of penalties that undo teams. Like, look, if you're fighting for a loose puck, like, the Roman Josi penalty last night, that was kind of questionable. Even kind of the Philip Forsberg / although I know, Chris Mason and Hal Gill said, that's a penalty Forsberg can't take. Even that kind of play where you're fighting for the puck and it just kind of happens to be a bang, bang play, that happens. Like, that is fine. The penalties that you can't take are the Dante Fabro ones or the Colton Sissons ones where you're throwing the puck over the glass. I get that stuff happens, but you practice that play so much. You practice dumping the puck out. The Tommy Novak penalty where it's just a careless, wave of the stick that trips Miro Heiskanen in, the neutral zone. That's the kind of stuff that drives plays wild. And maybe the creme de la creme of the night, the Jeremy Lauzon penalty on Tyler Seguin. Now, I know a lot of people have come out, on Twitter over the past little bit, kind of defending Lauzon, saying, it wasn't as bad on the replay as it was live. Maybe it even should not have been a penalty or something like that. But, like, why even, if you're Jeremy Lauzon, try to make that play? Like, Sagan's one-on-one already with a defender. The only reason you're doing that is to go for the big hit, to kind of do the crushing Scott Stevens style hit. And number two, if you're going to make that hit, don't jump 10 feet in the air. That is like, even if like the contact is when you're on the ground, like even when your skates are on the ground, if you follow through with as much height as Jeremy Lauzon did on that play, that is going to be a gimme anytime. Even if, like I said, even if it's a clean hit, even if it's just the follow through, refs are going to see you jump 20 feet in the air like you're MJ at a slam dunk contest and go, oh yeah, that's a dirty hit. Why put yourself in that position if you're Jeremy Lauzon? And number two, why even go for that hit? Sagan was being contained one-on-one. Again, that was a play that you were making just to make a big hit. And we've seen that a couple of times. The Preds, go for the big hit, go for the, aggressive physical play, and just even if they, don't get penalized or something like that, maybe they miss, maybe they get out of position. And there's just a lot of little plays that it's just like, if you don't make that play, if you stay in position, if you stay, you're not being super aggressive to make that play, you have a chance to do something the other way. And that to me is the frustration for that Jeremy Lauzon play, is just like, if you didn't do that, Tyler Seguin, maybe I can't remember. I think it was Dante Fabro that he was going up against, maybe he beats him one-on-one, something like that. But more than likely, he's not going to get a very good chance. That power play you put them on gave them a few very good chances, and it switched the momentum of the game because that kept the attack over the last, 3-4 minutes of the game completely in the Nashville zone. And we saw that lead to the game-winning Roope Hintz goal. And it's just plays like that. The lack of discipline, the lack of awareness, when you're so focused on, making the aggressive play, being that physical team, that you're kind of just whiffing on good chances that are right around you, a better plays. That shows a lack of awareness. And that is something that we have talked about with this team since this past February. This is kind of what doomed them towards the end of last year too. And the fact that it's not getting fixed, that's maybe where you have to go, okay, what is it with this coaching staff that this has been the routine? And I get it, to the people that are about to say, okay, well, John Hynes isn't skating. He's not the one on the ice, not making these dumb plays. That's true. I agree. But any problem, any routine problem that goes unfixed for almost an entire calendar year, that's partly on the coach. The coach has to do something, and it's not happening. And that's what's frustrating. More from this game in just 1 second. Interesting soundbite from Roman Josi about where the Preds are right now and his assessment of what this team has done over the past little bit. So we'll get to that in a second. But first, want to mention today's show is sponsored by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball, soccer, and of course, everything you need to know with hockey. They got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like the one we here do at Locked On Preds every day, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as we continue to talk about the Nashville Predators 3-2 loss to the Dallas Stars last night, I want to get to some post-game from Roman Josi. He was kind of asked where he thinks the Preds are right now, and it kind of paints – I like his answer because it kind of paints my thoughts on the team and kind of paints where the Preds are big picture. So here's what Josi said.
Yeah, I think just consistency, and I think our game's gotten better over the last couple of games, but I think we got to find a way to play that way for 60 minutes. And even tonight, I think in the first, we kind of start slow, you're kind of coming from behind. So I think to string a couple of wins together here, we gotta play like that for 60 minutes. And well, I think our game's gotten better, but there's still a lot of room for improvement.
I like that answer because, yes, I agree that I do think the Preds have played better. You know, they had those two big wins last week, the week before Christmas, when we were like, they absolutely have to do something right here. And even in Colorado, even though they lost that game in overtime and kind of, you know, screwed themselves in the second and third periods of that one, overall, they played really well. The first period of that game was arguably one of the best periods the Preds have played all season. And even the start of the second period, they were really cooking. And then, you know, to what Josi alluded to, you know, it was just like one mistake that doomed them, and they just couldn't get out of that funk. And it was like, that's the inconsistency, is you're seeing pockets of really good play from the Nashville Predators. In fact, it's sort of one of those things where you like take a step back and look, you're like, you know what? The Predators over the past 2 weeks have played some really good hockey. Like all four of the games that the Preds have played over the last little bit, you would look at and say, you know what? Overall, on paper, that's not a bad game. That's actually a pretty good game from the team. But over the last two, they're not getting wins from it. And that's what goes into the other part of the Roman Josi soundbite, is it's just they're being undone. You know, we mentioned the penalties, but also on that last goal, kind of have to go back to Roman Josi on this one because, you know, he and Carrier were kind of frozen a lot on that play where they're just kind of, you know, there's so much puck movement, so much that they really couldn't keep track of where anybody was or where the puck was. You know, there's plays like that. The Dante Fabro play from the Colorado game last Friday night, another good one. It's like, you know, you're up 2-0. You seem to have all the momentum, and then you just make an absolutely, you know, daft play that just kind of ties that up. And, you know, it's just a steal like that. And all of a sudden, that goal that Mikko Rantanen scored flipped the momentum on its head. And after that, it was all Colorado. And then you saw it last night where it's just, you know, the Preds, bad first period, but they dug themselves out of it. They get something going. You know, the Forsberg ties it. It looks like they have momentum, and the Preds wind up back on the penalty kill. And that's the frustrating thing, is there's so much of that with this Nashville Predators team where you look at and say, it's there. Like the play that they need to be a good team is there. It's just not coming through in like for complete 60-minute performances. And again, that game last night, you take a step back with no context of where this team is, and you say, okay, that's a good game. But in the context of where the Nashville Predators are right now, where you're behind in the standings, you're sixth place, in the wild card race. So you're 4 points out of a wild card spot, 7 points behind Edmonton. I mean, you're in danger of getting passed by Arizona here in the next couple of games. Those performances are optimistic, but they're not good enough to get the Predators back to where they need to be. So they need to kind of up that ante a little bit. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, that to me is the next big discussion is, do you have faith in the Nashville Predators to turn that around? I mean, it's a fair question to ask. A couple of highlights from last night that I want to point out. And one is somebody that we've talked about a lot, and that's Yakov Trenin. He, of course, had that great shorthanded goal that tied the game in the second period, made it 2-2. And it's good to see Yakov Trenin get back on the score sheet because he has had a little bit of an off season from where he was. That's his first goal since December 10th, only his third of the season. He's up to 8 points now, which is, better than it was at the start of the season where he just couldn't find the score sheet at all. That's good because the Preds need Yakov Trenin to kind of be that power forward. And last night you saw glimpses of that great, kind of exit transition out of the zone, shorthanded, kind of look off your man, and then just rip a great shot over the shoulder of Jake Ottinger to score. Those are the games we need from Yakov Trenin because he has got such a unique skill set. Probably the closest thing the Preds have to like a really physical type of two-way power forward. We talk about how he's good defensively, pretty good defensive awareness. And we just haven't seen that kind of same offensive spark this year from last year when he scored 17 goals. But last night was a perfect glimpse of it where he carried the puck out of the zone, good offensive awareness, kind of freezing the defender on that 2-on-1 and then ripping the shot over Ottinger. We need more from Yakov Trenin last night. Want to shout that out. Really good play from Yakov Trenin. Another guy that I want to shout out from last night, this is another guy we've talked a lot about before, but Cody Glass. Cody Glass, compared to his last game, but you see him out there making really good two-way plays a lot. And it says something, and Alex Doherty from A to Z Sports had a really good article about this, but it says something that, this was a guy that, was in the lineup, out of the lineup, somewhat controversially at the beginning of the season, just couldn't seem like he could get anything together. And now all of a sudden, over the past month or so, it says something that he's become the guy that John Hynes routinely puts out there against the other team's big guns. And that is a big thing, a big noticeable thing that he has kind of gone from this, guy. It's like, oh, is he a bust? Are they using him right? To now being kind of one of the most trusted guys on that entire Predators roster. I mean, he is getting big matchups week after week after week, and it really says something to his development that John Hynes is able to trust him to do that. And of course, the other guy that I want to shout out is somebody that we shout out a lot, and that's Mattias Ekholm. In the whole sphere of should the Preds be in the rebuild, should they not? Why aren't people scoring? Anything like that. It's gone under the radar that Mattias Ekholm, really across the NHL this year, is having one of the best defensive seasons by a defenseman in the entire NHL. He's up there, towards the top in a lot of like the defensive advanced stats. And you saw what he can do last night. I mean, he was the beast on that Predators penalty kill. Just really good positioning, really good communication. I love the communication between him and Carrier. Those two have a really good rapport together. And it's just, you see kind of this veteran defensive presence. And Ryan McDonough is like that too. But it's just this play where, you're not, it's like, when he's out there, he's not going to make an obvious mistake, or, you know that he's always going to be in the right place that he needs to be. And that's big for a young Nashville Predators team like this. So I really loved the play from Mattias Ekholm last night, and would love to see more, and glad that he's starting to get some recognition around the Preds universe for the good season he's having, because he is. There's a lot of people maybe nonplussed by his contract that's starting this year, but in terms of his play, Mattias Ekholm is certainly earning his worth this year. All right, more coming up from this game in a little bit, and sort of the Preds' big picture, $1 million question, saying it's after this last little stretch run, or December so far, is John Hynes on the hot seat? Are big changes coming? We'll look at the schedule and try to talk about maybe what happens here over the next couple of games. But first, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. It's the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's Take of the Day. So Locked On Sports Today, it's available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, just like this one. Tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast, Ann Kimmel is back, and as we're running low on 2022, we decided to do some retrospective on the Nashville Predators year 2022 as a whole. We have got our Preds year in review, some of our favorite moments, some of our best goals, our favorite game, and who we think is the Preds player of the year. It could go a couple different ways with that one. Plus, we will also have our mid-season NHL awards, a couple of debates over who should win the Hart, Vezina, Norris, all that good stuff. So that's coming up this week on the Locked On Predators podcast. So be sure to tune in. And I feel like that's a good transition to talking about the Preds as a whole, where they are right now. Like we said, they're 6th in the wild card race, so 4 points out of a playoff spot, 7 points back. They're 3rd to last in the entire NHL in terms of offense, 30th in the NHL in offense. They're 2-5-3 in their last 10. And it's just, it feels like the antsiness is ramping up, even with the improved play over the past couple of weeks. Losses like last night, losses like Colorado the other night. It's kind of making the anticipation, the restlessness of the Preds fan base, it's kind of upping that a little bit. So you look at the schedule, and Ann and I, we talked about it, December being an absolute gauntlet for the Nashville Predators. It finally comes to an end, but it's not exactly easy. So they got the Anaheim Ducks this Friday out in California, and then they have the Vegas Golden Knights, who are one of the best teams in the NHL right now, on New Year's Eve out in Vegas. Those are back-to-back games. And it's kind of ironic. Remember when Peter Laviolette got fired? It was after that West Coast road trip. It was after the Preds lost in a shootout to Anaheim, came home and couldn't get it together. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. There was some different circumstances surrounding why Peter Laviolette was fired when he was fired compared to where John Hynes and the Predators are now. There's some differences, but I feel like it's kind of getting to the point where you have to ask yourself, when do you make a change? Because I think the way the Preds are playing now, if they can't clean up like some of the mistakes that's doing them in some of those games, even with their improved play, even though we've seen some improvement over the past couple of weeks in terms of their overall play, if the Preds can't start getting back into the playoff chase, I do feel like the conversation around the future of some of the coaches, some of the managers, and maybe some of the players, I feel like that ramps up a little bit. I really do. And again, I love John Hynes. He's been, a pretty decent fresh air, a breath of fresh air in Nashville. He's been very open and honest with some of his answers to the fans, to the media on some of the hot topics. But it's what the Predators have been doing over the past year is just not sustainable for a team. And, we've heard a lot of rumblings from people. We've heard it from players and managers themselves that the Predators loaded up because they thought they could make a run this year. And again, think what you want. Think what you listening at home want. I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. I'm not saying that like last year's crazy stats season from some of these players is sustainable or was going to be the new norm. I'm saying the Predators thought that. That's why the Predators went out and, maybe put themselves in a tight spot 3 or 4 years down the road to take on that Ryan McDonagh contract. That's why they spent a lot of money on, Niederreiter. That's why they gave Mattias Ekholm a big deal. That's why they gave Philip Forsberg a big deal, because they thought that they had enough to kind of fix what was undoing them over the past few seasons and some of these first-round playoff exits. And not only is it not working, but they're worse off than they were last year. And so if you're the Nashville Predators and you made this big investment and you loaded up thinking that this was going to kind of be the year you broke back through that brick wall that was keeping you out of the second round of the playoffs, and instead you're facing an even bigger uphill climb, and all of a sudden your roster situation looks that much more dire, something is going to change. Whether that's John Hynes, whether that's a change from ownership to, maybe shuffle who's making some of these hockey decisions, or maybe you blow up the core, maybe trade out a few pieces, bring in a few fresh pieces. I'm not saying full rebuild. I'm just saying shuffling the core. It feels like something is got to happen soon within the next couple of months. And I think if the Predators look very bad in these next 2 games, Anaheim is, there's no excuse for looking bad against Anaheim the way they're playing right now. I mean, they're atrocious in terms of the NHL standings. So if you look bad in that game and then you turn around and also get embarrassed by Vegas, do you think New Year's Day in the start of the new year, do you think history repeats itself? That's a question that's worth asking if the Predators can't get out of these next 2 games with at least something positive, with at least a big, overall good win. Maybe you don't beat Vegas, but maybe you play very well against them and maybe just, give up a goal or something like that. Maybe. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. Tweet us at LO_Predators or leave a comment on our YouTube page. I really want to get your take on when do you think the Preds pull the trigger on a major change? Do you think if the Preds kind of limp through the next week or so that something is going to change, something drastic? Let us know, and we will, who knows, maybe do some responses on a future podcast. As for me, you can find my work at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to subscribe so you'll always know when we have fresh content out for you. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.